This is Alan,
This is Brandon.
and welcome to Dice Over Everything, the miniatures gaming podcast.
All right. So how do you know that a miniatures game has made it?
I don't know. How do you? This is now a joke.
There's tournaments of it at Adepticon.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. So, is there tournaments for this game that we're going to talk about?
Probably. They're listed on their Facebook page, but not their events page. So probably.
Okay. And is Adepticon actually going to happen?
That's a probably as well. On both pages, they think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and if Adepticon doesn't happen, then all these games have one more year to try to make it.
Yeah, it's like 4 months away from this podcast. So who knows?
Yep. So the game that we're talking about is a Vroom Vroom game, which is
it's Gaslands, and specifically Gaslands the Refueled edition, which the maker does not call the second edition.
It's the first edition.
It's the first edition cleaned up, I guess.
It's the first complete edition. Yeah. I actually never bought the blue book. So Gaslands was released from Osprey as a blue book, which is this great little set of small, what is it, like 30 to 60 page war games, right? So they're really lean books with not a lot of fluff or anything like that, or story, just cool different games to play.
Yep. So the original rulebook, I think, was somewhere around that range of pages.
Yep. And so Gaslands is a car driving game where it's trying to emulate the Mad Max style kind of road race or death race kind, probably more death race than Mad Max kind of style, a mashup maybe, feeling of, I guess it's death race, of like cars in a post-apocalyptic world where they go race and try to blow each other up and while also winning the race. So cars with guns. And the coolest thing is, my opinion about the game, is that it uses matchbox sized cars.
So you now, as an adult, have an excuse to go out and buy Hot Wheels.
Yes. And you know what? Hot Wheels are cheap. A lot of people complain about how miniatures are getting more and more expensive. Well, Matchbox cars are super cheap. They're probably even cheaper than if you were to 3D print it yourself.
Yeah, and there's a huge number of them out there. So there's loads to choose.
You can get your old ones. You can even get the ones that you played with when you were like 4. And then take it out. And if it's stripped metal, if there's like parts where raw metal is showing, that's even better because you're trying to make a post-apocalyptic car. Then you got to like strap on like a gun from Warhammer 40,000 or something, or some sort of random gun, or maybe just make it out of plastic card, or even better, from a toy from G.I. Joe, strap it onto your car, and now you're good to go. That's one of the cars you need to go and race.
Or you could be like me and just have like a random Hot Wheels appear on your balcony, because who knows how the heck it flew up several full stories, but now it's one of my coolest cars. There you go.
So that child who lost their Hot Wheels, you know what? At least the Hot Wheels went to good use now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's super cool. It's like it. I think that's part of the reason why it kind of blew up and is now an Adepticon, is because just the idea of being able to play with Hot Wheels, like with cars, everyone loves those kind of movies, right? Mad Max, the last one, Fury Road, was, in my opinion, one of the best movies of the past 10 years. And so combining that with miniature gaming, this is a space that has had games before, but none that really took off. And I think, and I don't think none that had used Hot Wheels to go play, right? And so this is like a great combination of exactly what you want in a miniatures game, right? Taking out those toys and stuff that you always loved, and having an excuse to go down and play with them with your friends as adults. Or teenagers, I guess.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what do you need to play then? Like, we've obviously mentioned the car part.
Mm-hmm. So you need the rule book, which is a decent buy. It's an Osprey large book now. Gaslands Refueled, is it called?
Yeah, it's got nice art. It's got cool pictures of cars in it. So
Yeah, a bunch of like Hot Wheels modified or Matchbox cars modified up,
Mhm.
and so you need the book. You need probably like two Matchbox cars each if you're playing two people. But one of the greatest things is if you can have 4 or 6 people play, and then maybe you don't need two cars.
Yeah, you can. They recommend the usual army has 2 cars or maybe 2 cars plus a bike if you're playing the normal points level. But yeah, you can. There's no. You're not forced to play at a certain point level.
Yeah. And so you can even do, if you have a lot of guys, like 8 guys, everyone just play one car, right?
Yep, that's absolutely one of the formats I think you see at like the tournaments, just so lots of people can get in, and then maybe that's like a qualifier as you play with your 1 car, and then you get into the next round, just to make it
Yep.
fast.
And then besides those, you need some stuff for more the gaming side, right?
Mhm.
You need a whole bunch of D6 dice. So
Yep.
six-sided
So the
dice, you need a ton of them.
yeah, so you can either use like your regular d6s you have lying around,
Uh-huh.
and the thing is, you're not always rolling for numbers. You're sometimes rolling for results, which
That's
you can
true.
equate the results to numbers on the dice. But it's often more fun to have their dice because some of the outcomes are good,
Mhm.
some of the outcomes are bad. And when you're
Yeah.
playing with other people, it's always more fun that they can see that, like, oh no, you didn't get what you wanted, or oh,
Yeah,
okay, you can pull off the move. Whereas if you're
that's
looking
right.
at the numbers, it's harder to figure out like whether you've got hazard, whether you've got a shift, which is good, or whether you're
Mhm.
skidding or things like that. It's just easier, you know, right away. You don't have to translate it. So it's more
Yeah.
fun, I find, to play with the skid dice they call them.
Yeah. So what Brennan is saying is that basically you can use six-sided dice, like just the normal
Mhm.
six-sided dice, but for a lot of the rolls, you're just using the dice for each of the sides of the dice will equate to a different result. And so
Mhm.
therefore, it's kind of nice and cute to have your own like special dice with the symbols for each thing, because it's not about numbers. It's like one is a skid, two is shift, right? And three each has a different result. And you're kind of equating them on a table. But it'd be even
Mhm.
cooler if just a table is on your dice, right? So you can buy specific Gaslands dice to play the game for the driving part.
Yeah, if you're getting into the game for the first few times, maybe you don't go all in. You just use D6. If
Yeah.
you find the game fun,
I
then
yeah.
then definitely get the dice.
I like a lot of D6 because you can use them to track damage, and you can use them like for everything basically. So personally, I would say I would stick with just D6, but other people definitely like using their own custom things for the driving part. Besides that, you have a bunch of templates. Now you can photocopy these outside of the back. Well, you're not going to photocopy them. You're just
You
going to
can
download the PDF.
you just download the PDF from Osprey and then
Yeah.
then
So
print them
Osprey
off
has
and
a bunch
download
of
it.
templates. Exactly. You print them off and you use those. Just make sure that you print them off at like 100% so that they're the right size, as opposed to like resizing them to fit the page. Otherwise, it's going to look weird. You're
Yep.
not going to be playing with the same size templates. And then the last thing is to track things. You probably need some sort of pencil and paper, or maybe use your phone to track that stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the tracking actually comes from the tokens you print off. So it's pretty helpful. Those are all the kind of necessary, the tokens, just to keep track of like we'll talk about it later, but various states in the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
And in terms of number of cars, you can get started with 2 cars,
Mm-hmm.
but they also sell some sprues, which the sprues, the main point of them, they give you some cool weapons to add to the cars, but as a miniature gamer, you
Mm-hmm.
probably already have bits around. But the main thing you get is a Hot Wheels scale bike from one sprue, and they've just come up with another sprue that gives you a Hot Wheels scaled buggy, which
Really?
often, yep,
That's kind of cool.
yeah. So like if you don't hugely kit your 2 cars out, you can sort of go lighter on their equipment. And then you can fit in 2 cars and a bike, or maybe a truck, a car, and
Yeah.
like a buggy or something. So you've got those are kind of your standard. They call them cans, a 50 can army is a
Uh-huh.
sort of standard size, and that's about what you get in that point level.
Yeah, so I would say that's one of also the great things is you don't need actually that many cars, right? Like in my stable, I have 2 cars and a buggy, and I don't really plan on expanding outside of that. Um, and there's a bunch of different types of cars, right? You can have like a truck, or like a performance car or just a sedan. And then you can have bikes and buggies. So I think that's, like it's not very much, right? And like we said, they're matchbox cars, right? And then you
Mhm.
just go ham on converting them, like adding weapons. And like Brandon's saying, you have like multiple different sprues, right? Like they actually sell sprues to help you upgrade your bike. So you don't have to necessarily scratch build your guns and stuff like that, or steal from your GI Joes, collectors GI Joes weapons to make your guns. But it's relatively cheap, and that's really nice. And again, the fun, honestly, when we started playing, we had a league before COVID, and it was like 16 people or more
Yeah.
showing up, each with their own converted cars. Right? It's
Yeah, it's
so nice and
really
fun to
cool seeing
see.
what people do with them.
Yeah, they hadn't all converted their cars, but like a whole bunch of us had already converted and painted it. So we like literally, it's so weird to go and take a Matchbox car and then like paint on top of their like on top of the paint job, so it looks more like a model, right? Because you want
Mhm.
the so most Matchbox cars are like painted with the shiny glossy kind of paint, right? But then I went back and like painted them so that they have more of the matte color that you expect from a mini. It's
Yeah, no,
kind of fun.
absolutely.
It's
Like you want
silly.
paint over it. So my suggestion for
You
doing
don't
that,
have to. In some ways, some people would say it's not as
oh,
realistic once you do it, but it's
all
just
the
fun
cool
to
ones
do
that
that.
we did were painted over. But I would sort of suggest just using like a very fine grit sandpaper just to sort of sand down the edges, because that's often where your paint comes off. So just give it a very
Mhm.
fine sanding to just catch those outside edges. And spray primer is probably going to stick a little better for Matchbox
Yeah,
cars because they've got such shiny
yeah,
paint.
definitely. Yeah. So if you go about it, like it's so fun. And I know a couple of guys like from the group just went insane on like the fun of converting cars. I guess they were probably car people, right? So if you're a car person but also a miniatures person, this is a great
Mhm.
way to like combine those two hobbies and go hog wild in something that's not very common in the hobby space.
Yeah. All right. So how would we describe the game as playing?
So I guess
So
we talked all about like the setup of what is cool, but what really sells it, like when the rubber hits the road, the game still has to be fun. And
Mhm.
that is the magic of this game, right? Like this game is super fun. It has that feel of like high octane driving because there's a lot of push your luck stuff. And there's the important part, in my opinion, of driving, especially because I'm not really a car person, but I love car movies, is the crashes. So like the game has built in, because you can push your luck, it also
Mhm.
adds in like not being able to control your car and then crashing into another car and taking damage and have that kind of wreck, right? That is a super kind of fun game, right? If you like that kind of thing.
Yeah, because like you've got to roll dice to get the outcomes you want. If you get a lot of bad outcomes, your car may just like wipe out and go in some direction you don't expect, or just go flying into a bunch of terrain and be.
Yep. And then smash into something else. And that's kind
Mhm.
of so it really sells the feeling of the racing, like pushing forward, trying to go fast, and like being on that nice edge of almost wiping out, but making it. And it has this really clever mechanic, um, where there are like Brandon's like you were saying, right? You have the dice when you roll dice and you're trying to move and try to push your luck, you're using a dice pool of different results, right? Some of them are just shifting up and some shifting down and cancels and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But some of them are like things that could potentially be bad, like a spin, but they could also be good, right? Because sometimes you want to spin at the right time to go around a current corner.
Yeah, so it feels like drifting almost because if you come around the corner, but you
Exactly.
actually need to take the corner tighter, you get the
Mhm.
spin result, and then you kind of like basically drift. If you envision it, it's basically
Yes.
like instead of turning normally and your car pointed straight, you finish off sort of turn sideways. So on your next move,
Yeah.
you can start going in an even tighter direction. Or because how the guns work for how you put guns on your cars,
Mhm.
when you outfit your cars and buy weapons for them, you've got to choose a direction they face. Unless you want to pay like an exorbitant amount to make them face every direction,
Yeah.
you've got to take up your slots to put the weapons on and then choose a direction they go. So the direction your car ends up facing when you drive it, you feel like you've got to drive really well to keep keep the car going where you want it to go, not crash, and keep your weapons at the same time pointed at the targets you want to shoot. So like when you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, I'll totally mount the gun on the front of my car. And you're like, yeah, but if I want to be leading the race, what am I going to do with my front mounted machine gun? It's not going to do anything. I'm in the lead. And you're like, oh, okay. This is my lead car I'm building. I'm going to give it like napalm. It drops out the back, or I'm just going to put a gun around the back of it, just like shooting at everyone who's tailing me if it's a really fast car.
Yeah. And then that's why you have your support car then, who has the gun on the front, who is basically hunting people who are trying to push ahead. So that kind of dynamic is like great. I think that just that feeling of doing that. And because you're rolling dice to try to get it, it really does feel like you're pushing your luck, like I said, right on that nice edge, trying to get that result so you can do that tight turn. But then the other thing is, if you are trying to go straight on a straightaway and then you roll these bad dice, you have to use them. So you might end up, it's basically like going out of control, even though if you try to do a turn, right? It's exactly the thing you want. When you don't want to do the turn, it's actually terrible.
Yeah. So basically what usually gets your car to like lose control is that there's hazard tokens you take whenever like you get the results that aren't just driving in a straight line, like your slide or your spin, or just plain hazards that come up on the dice. They keep adding hazards to your car, and depending on the car or the truck or whatever, it can only take a certain amount of that before you lose control and your car just moves in a random direction, then ends up pointed in a random direction. And because this game seemed to try and follow the rule of cool, the direction you end up pointing when you wipe out is chosen by one of the other players. So they'll either choose it so you go into the wall, they'll choose it so you're about to drive into another player. It follows the rule of cool with how the rules are written, which I really like.
Yeah. So then again, like it's not exactly the most realistic game, but it gives you a cinematic kind of feel, right? If you think about it, it's not like actually racing. It's like racing in a movie.
It's like Mario racing too. If you think of like Mario Kart, it's got a little bit.
I feel like it's a little bit more heavy. The cars feel more weighty, right? They have some sort of weight on them. So one of the things with Mario Kart that makes it feel like Mario Kart is everything is very like light, right? They can turn and
bump into each other and it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. But this one, it definitely feels more heavy. So I wouldn't say that it's more Mario Kart, but like I can see kind of what you're saying, but
the one Mario Kart thing is like if you crash into an object, that's bad, but they don't penalize you like forcing you to have to like drive backwards and then turn around and then get away from it. They're like, okay, you crash into it, you can just drive through it after. If you start in contact with it.
But actually crashing, and we might get into that a little bit later, crashing is really bad in this game.
Yes. Like it would
which makes it really important, right? To stay on that nice edge and not pass the nice edge and crash.
Yes.
So
but it'd be extremely disastrous if you had to back up your car and then get away from the obstacles. They just let you drive right through it. It's a gamey element, but it makes the gameplay smoother. So you get over the fact that doesn't reflect reality.
Okay, so let's go. I think we've talked a little bit about it, but let's go through things that you like. So what are the really good selling points of this game?
I think it's exactly where we started. You get to like make really cool cars out of Hot Wheels and paint them up how you want to paint them up. And just the whole process of coming up with an idea for a car, because you're encouraged to mount the weapon in the direction you want it and make the weapons look like what you want. And it costs so little, you can just go out and just build a whole new car for some idea you come up with. So
that's right.
I think that is the coolest part of the game, is just making the cars.
Okay. I think
I'm a modeler, so I'm biased.
Yeah, I think that's definitely cool. But I am not really a car person. So I did model the cars because obviously if I'm going to play miniatures game, I'm going to do that and I'm going to paint it up, and that was some sort of fun. But honestly, if I'm going to model, I'm not going to do cars in general. So I can see that for a lot of people that was the best part. For me, the thing though that really helped me like this game is actually the gameplay. It was the dice system. So normally when I think about like movement, these kind of games where you have a low number of vehicles going around, I immediately thought of X-Wing, right? Which is, I guess, based on Wings of Glory. So it's the kind of thing where you are, choosing direction and you're moving around and you're trying not to crash into people and stuff like that, and you're trying to shoot each other down, right? But so in my head, I was thinking, oh, you have to do that, like you secretly choose, which direction you're going, and then you reveal it, and then you crash, right? But I really like the way that instead the game used this push your luck dice mechanic to force crashes and force like cool movements and slides and like movement. I thought that was really clever way to do movement and to get push your luck without using like hidden things. And it also means that it also forces you to like lose control, but also feel like instead of just being like losing control and going in a random direction, it's, well, you kind of are, right? But like it feels like, I love the fact that losing control at the right time is a good thing, right? When you do your slide and you're trying to like go around, right?
Yeah, because in
I
X-Wing, your
think
movement is like exactly precise. You choose something, it happens.
exactly,
But in
and it
Gaslands, the
happens.
dice can make some random crazy crap happen.
Yeah,
So
so
you
it
have to
feels a
be
lot more
on
like, yeah, it feels a lot more like when you're driving, right? Like what I imagine, race driving and stuff like that, right? Is that you
like
you do
rally
choose, you're
car
saying, I
driving.
need this result, I need to do it this way, and can I get it? And the performance cars have more dice and things like that to make sure that you do the right one. But
Mhm.
that is really once like I was not actually sold on this game, but you guys were playing it, so I was like, okay, I'll try it out. And but after I played that mechanic, I really really liked it, and that's what kind of sold me, that it's another way to like push your luck, right? I love
Yeah.
those mechanics, that idea of like uncertainty and then just deciding what you're doing, and then like basically it's a little bit of gambling where you put it all like, I need this, right? I'm behind on the race, I got to put it all on red, I gotta go for the slide, right? Even though it's
Mhm.
so unlucky, I got to do it, right? I love those kind of examples. And so that's the thing that kind of sold me on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good mechanic as well. All right. So that's what we like the most about it. So I guess what do we like the
Oh,
least?
one more thing that I want to
Oh,
emphasize,
yeah.
along with the push your luck, that I really like, is when you fail and you crash. Driving games need crashing, and this
Uh-huh.
game really, because you have that kind of push your luck thing, it can really happen. The other thing is going too fast, basically, and then smashing into something.
Yeah, you always like laughing at your opponents when they get too greedy, like, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna
Yeah.
win. Like, you went too crazy,
and and then
maniac.
yeah, yep. All right, so I think we've actually said a lot of good things. I think you can already tell we like this game.
Mhm.
But what are some bad things about the game? Things that maybe you didn't like as much, or problems that you wish were a little bit different, or things like that.
Yeah. So I think we said it was okay. The fact that some realism is missing from the game just to make it operate better as a game.
Yep.
But the one thing I didn't like that sort of falls outside of the realistic realm is for
Mm-hmm.
how the shooting works, that how the
Uh-huh.
game operates, that for every time like you're in a certain gear, which
Uh-huh.
equates the number of times you can activate per turn, and it also restricts the number of movement templates you can use. Like the higher gear you're in, you have to use the longer templates,
Uh-huh.
and lower gear, you got to use shorter templates. But every time you get to a gear activation within a whole turn, you get to choose to
Uh-huh.
shoot. And I mean, it's cool that you can push your luck and just keep shooting over and over and over if you're going really fast.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, it feels sort of unrealistic, and the game starts, I don't know, it feels like
Super gamey.
it feels super gamey. The fact that you drive at the super speed and you get to shoot over and over, and then even though that person's sitting there and you're shooting and they're just sitting there not shooting, even though obviously times should be progressing. Like,
Uh-huh.
sure, there's the risk reward, but it feels so unrealistic that you just drive past one and they don't shoot at you at all. So
Yeah. I agree. I think it just feels like kind of a little bit immersion breaking. Like,
mhm.
why, when you're driving faster, do you shoot more? Right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense in that way. So that kind of like it it's not really about balance. It's just about immersion. It feels, excuse me, weird. The other thing that I think is actually like that part is kind of an annoyance, but the other thing that is actually, I think, probably the biggest weakness of the system is related to the gears that you're talking about. So basically, every round is broken up into 5 gear turns, and if you are in a gear that is above or equal to the gear turn level, you get to activate, right? So if you're in gear 3, you get to activate on turn on, I guess, gear 1, gear 2, gear 3. But when it gets to gear 4 and 5 of that turn, you're not allowed to activate, right? Unless you're in that gear, right, or higher. And so that in and of itself is some sort of, I guess, fine, right? Like you know, there's some limits on the templates that you can use and everything like that, and you can move faster, and then you can say it's some sort of balance in terms of moving faster and shooting and stuff like that, because you also are not able to have as much like directions that you can move. But the problem is how it interacts with the wipeout system is that if you wipe out in gear 1, you cannot activate. You go down to gear 0, and that means that you don't get to activate on 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Whereas if you ended up wiping out on gear 4, right, you only are out for 1 gear level, right? Because everyone gets to activate on the first gear, right? Which feels just really gamey and weird, right? Because you could be moving at speed 4 in the on the first like gear 1 round, right? So you are still going at 4, but if you wiped out, if it just happened to be right the first activation of the round, and you wipe out there, you're kind of screwed as opposed to later on, right? So there's some sort of gaminess in that, and I really feel like that's just like, I feel like there could have been some sort of thinking to make it feel less like, you know, being out for 4 rounds, right?
Yeah, the system is simple, but it doesn't feel realistic, and it pushes the players who are like, if anything happens, you fall behind really far.
Yeah, and so you're going to want to activate, like you want to follow the gears, right? Because the faster you get, the more hazards you have, and the more likely you are to wipe out, right? So it's kind of weird because you will try to zoom up, right, with the gears, because every turn you can go fast. So every like, you know, like I said, the turns break into 5 gears. Every gear, if you're activated, you have a chance to move up to the next gear to activate on that one as well, right? But once you're up to gear 4, you kind of want to go back down to gear 1 and then kind of move up, because you don't want to continually add gears for yourself. But you only want to do that when you're on the lowest, you're at the start of the turn and not at the end of the turn. It just feels, instead of making the turns feel fluid where everything flows together, right? It makes it feel like every round is like going up and down, right? It just feels weird to me. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like everything is like really, if you're driving, it's not like everyone starts slow and then goes up and then starts slow again and then goes up, right?
Yeah, because also when you go into higher gears, you use longer templates, so it feels like you're moving faster. So
yeah, I know. So it just feels like I feel like there's some other way that they could have done it. So it just feels like the game, instead of resetting every round, it feels more fluid. Like to me, I think even if they just got rid of rounds entirely and it's just constant activations, and instead of, you know, going up gear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's like every single time you activate, you count down on the numbers that you have, right? So, and if you are like, or you count up, let's say, right? You take like, I don't know what you call it, exhaustions or speed tokens. And as long as your speed tokens, and once your speed token exceeds your gear, then you miss a turn, right? Something like that, right? And if you did it that way, then the cars would be more fluid, right? You miss a turn, like if you're going speed 5, you can go up to 5 before you miss a turn, which means that you're going faster. You still get more activations than if you go speed 4, which means that you activate 4 times, then you miss a turn, right? three if you go speed 3. So it just feels like if you did something like that, that's just like, just an idea, but some way to make the game more fluid. Whereas the way that the game plays right now, it feels very stepped. Which is too bad in my opinion.
Yep. Oh well. All right. So I guess beyond that, do you have any tips for people who are just getting into the game for how to get the most out of it?
Yeah, so exactly what I was saying there. If you're gonna wipe out, try to wipe out at the end of a round. Sometimes it's better to wipe out at turn 5 than try to push it into a new round, which is totally gamey. But like you should, if you feel like you're gonna wipe out the next 3 turns, it's better to like wipe out at the gear level 5 as opposed to start the new turn and wipe out at gear level 1, right?
And just don't wipe out near any terrain to crash into.
Yes, exactly.
Wipe out
So being able to know like how to use that gear system, which is like totally arbitrary, I understand, but like if you do that, you'll be a lot more you'll enjoy the game, I think, a lot more, because it's the worst when you wipe out in gear 1 and then you just have to wait, especially if you have 4 players and you just have to wait and do nothing as everyone else is moving like 8 activations or something. It's terrible.
Yeah. So any suggestions about like the number of players? Because we've talked about other games like Frostgrave and that. And you're like, oh yeah, when you play Frostgrave, you don't want to play it as a 2-player game. You want to play Frostgrave 3 to 4 players. Oddly.
I think 3 or 4 players is probably good with 2 cars each.
So cut the number of cars down possibly. Like say maybe if you're only playing 2 players, maybe to get around the issue of like some of your cars not being able to activate because they just like wiped out. Maybe play at higher point levels when you only have 2 people so that all the time you've got some of your cars doing something.
Yeah.
But then when you get to like 3-4 player level, maybe if you're up to 4 players, maybe don't go all the way to 50, maybe just go to 45 cans.
Yeah. So basically just have 2 vehicles. I think actually probably 2 vehicles per person with at least 3 or 4 people is probably the best. I probably wouldn't go over 4 though. It starts like, because you have 5, that's 10 cars each. That's a lot of cars.
Yeah, we've played 5-player games before, and it goes around for so long without you doing anything that it takes far too long. The game's not as fun that way.
Yeah, but I do think everyone should have 2 cars. I think it's better if you have 2 cars, so you have a car that supports the other. I think that's the best way to play it, especially even if you're playing like teams where technically each team has 2 cars, but each person only tries 1 car. Like I said, because of the wipeout system, it makes it really not fun if you wiped out at the early part of the round and you have to wait for everyone to activate. So having that second car really helps limit the chances of you not doing anything for like the majority of a round.
Yeah, and I think another tip for just because the game can play sort of slowly. The one tip I think people should take is that you should plan your next car's move out well in advance, like because other people are doing stuff. It's easy for you to look at like you've got to figure out where the template's going to make you end up. So a lot of people, when it starts their turn, they start thinking. They just don't think while other players are going. But if you want to like be a good opponent and like have the game go smoothly, like plan your move out while your opponent's going, because often they won't affect your car because they're nowhere near you on the table. So it's usually your move doesn't get changed. So plan your moves out while other people are going rather than just like staring open mouth at what they're doing. Because it makes the game play so much faster. It's much better.
The other thing I'd say is that, so this game is meant to be played in a campaign system. So you're trying to like build up your cars and then they get damaged and then they build up. Definitely play that. I think it makes the game super fun. And then play in a league, like a driving race league. I think the idea of that is super great. And I think because of the low buy-in, it's surprising how many people you can get to play the game. I was actually super surprised at how quickly people would come because it's such low buy-in relative to the other games. Like you think a skirmish game with 6 guys is cheap, 2 matchbox cars that you don't even technically have to paint. They come pre-painted and then you just show up. And as long as you have like templates and dice, you can play. Like this is a super low buy-in to play, right? You just have to
honestly, if one of your friends buys the nice acrylic templates, you're like, why even bring my own? Just borrow the nice templates because they take up a lot of space on the table. Like if everybody brings their own templates and you've got 4 people, the whole board's gonna be covered in templates. So if you've got like 2 sets of nice templates, you're pretty just good
always
to go.
around. You can always choose.
Yeah, so you and the person next to you share a set because there's a lot of templates in this game.
Yep. So I think that's definitely a thing to do. The other thing, what was I gonna say?
I think if you're
Obviously,
before,
convert and paint your cars. It's super
yeah.
fun.
So I think before painting a league, just because often there'll be new players, like play an
Uh,
introductory game or an exhibition game
mhm.
that doesn't
Yeah,
count, and so people can figure out what they like, how to play the game, so they're
yeah.
not blindsided by some of the mechanics, and then go into the campaign.
And I would also say play the race missions. Like the races are the best.
Yep.
So I think there's a couple of other ones that are non-race ones. They're not as fun. Like it is mostly death race, and the game is obviously made to do like death racing and stuff like that. So
Yeah, the very first mission is the death race. It's clearly that.
yep, that's the premier thing. And if you want to sell people, you can literally probably like the game is not super complicated. So if you have the stats up and everything like that and build all the cars, you could probably even almost play it as a board game with a bunch of friends, each guy running a car or two. I say two cars, right? And then
Mhm.
if you have like four friends over, each guy have two cars, that's like it will take a while. It'll take more than 3 hours. So it's a pretty long game, but it'll be quite, I think you can possibly like sell people on, right? Because this game is like a little bit like X-Wing, right? Which was also very easy to get people into. Um, yeah, so I think it's a relatively easy lift, I think, to get people to even try it out, which is I think one of the greatest selling factors of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So oddly, a game we're very positive about, but maybe because we haven't played it so much that we've seen the little tiny flaws. So
I don't know. I think the major we already you can kind of see the major flaw, right?
yeah, well, there were some minor point balancing issues in the first edition, but now in the 1.5 edition, like some of that got cleaned up. So
Although we haven't really played it enough, right, with COVID
yeah.
to really get into. Again, this is like mostly basically like first impressions. Although we've played a decent number of games, I'd still consider like we're not experts at this game at all. So we haven't learned how to break it at all.
No, but you don't need to try and
Yeah.
do that.
That's the other thing. The game is pretty relaxed, right? It's a great beer and pretzels games. You take a couple drinks, you play it around a table. You can definitely have a
Mhm.
lot of fun with this game. So
Yep. Yeah, it's not meant to be played as a tournament game. Like X-Wing, you have exact size bases with exact slots to put your template into. Whereas this game, like bigger cars kind of drive faster because they're bigger. And when you put the
that's the
template on the
other
back of the
true.
car, on the front of the car, the big car kind of just drives faster. So it's
Yeah,
not meant as a tournament game just because of how
you
there's
can
like
definitely convert your cars for advantage. That's for sure.
uh-huh. So don't take
So
it too seriously.
yes, the game is definitely meant to just evoke that feeling, which I think it does, even despite the flaws that we mentioned. Um, I think it I think it sells it. So I guess that comes to our last thing. Overall, what do you think of the game? What would you say?
Oh, I think it's sort of it's one of those things you play like if you're a real miniatures gamer, it's not going to become your main game because it's just not
Quote
super
unquote real
deep.
miniatures gamer.
Yeah, real hardcore, whatever you want to call it.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's not super deep. So I mean, if you're going to play something, you can only play something occasionally. Yeah, maybe you focus on it. But if you want sort of a distraction that's not going to like take you a year to paint up an army for, yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's fun to like take a break from your main game and play some Gaslands.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those league games. I think we mentioned Blood Bowl. It's another good league game where you can like play it for a league for a couple months, right? Play it every other week or maybe even play it once a month for like 6 weeks or something like or 6 months, right? As an occasional game.
Mhm.
Just to slide in there. I think this really, really works. And the other thing is like, even if you just do one race, it actually is pretty fun as well. So I totally agree. There's a couple of other league games, right? But that kind of thing where you slide in just as a break in between your regular games of let's say Infinity or Frostgrave or
Age of Sigmar or whatever. Mhm.
no, I didn't say that.
You
I
shouldn't.
wasn't gonna say that.
Uh-huh.
So but yeah, so Infinity or Frostgrave or Bolt Action or something like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
you can slide this in for a little bit of more fun, more lighthearted thing. And that's one of the other good things is that because it's so lighthearted, it's a great game to just slide in there in between.
Yeah. All right. I think that covers our initial thoughts on the game.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I would totally recommend this game for people to go play, try it out. slide it into your rotation. I think when we go back to gaming, if there is a league, I could see myself playing it. So sometime in 2024 or 2025, when we get to go back to regular meetings at the game store or something, we can try to restart it. Yeah. So that's basically it. If you have any questions about Gaslands, well, feel free to contact us at contact@diceovereverything.com.
Yeah, or find us on Facebook. We're Dice Over Everything. And if you want to let us know what you're up to, any questions, or see what we're up to, you can find us on Dice Over Everything group.
Yeah. So that's basically it. This has been Alan.
Yeah, it's been Brandon.
Bye.